It's episode 7 of the Better Than Average podcast. It is game week. However, we don't have a game week press conference today on this Monday because the campus shut down because of the weather that came through. So you won't hear from Mike Leach today. You'll maybe hear from him tomorrow. So what I'm going to do is look at one key position Mike Leach says is the most important on the team, and the depth chart has been released. So if you like depth charts, stay tuned.
It's a great day for you, huh?
Yeah, I tell you, it's better than average, I'll tell you that.
All right, welcome in. Matt White here with you. This is game week. If you hear any rattling around on the podcast right now, it's the remaining coffee I have left in my thermos from High Point Roasters in New Albany. I drank most of it during the radio show today, but I'm just going to pour the rest of it and have it during the podcast here. This podcast is presented by Mississippi Land Bank. Land Bank. Visit them online, mslandbank.com. They're the kind of folks that you want to do business with, trust me. So anything land related, buying, selling, farmland, hunting land, recreational property, building a dream home, anything land related, that's where you want to go. Check them out, mslandbank.com. All right, so we have the depth chart. They just put it out today. As I mentioned in the intro, there's no Mike Leach press conference on this Monday. You were going to have your first in-person, indoors, face-to-face Q&A media with Mike Leach, but it didn't happen today because they shut the campus down because of the weather coming through. So it looks like media may get a chance to ask him questions tomorrow after practice on Tuesday, which would actually be like tomorrow night because I don't think they start practicing until about 4:30 in the afternoon tomorrow on Tuesday. I'm sure there will be some questions about depth chart stuff, so I'm going to go over that with you. They put the depth chart out. It's the official depth chart as of August the 30th today. It says so on the official depth chart on the website. Now, whether or not it's going to change at all through the year, I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I think the MO over the years has been that Coach Leach doesn't change the depth chart once he puts it out there. But regardless, we'll go over that. However, the first thing I want to do is take a look at what Mike Leach says is the most important position on the entire football team. Now, what would that be? Would it be quarterback, receiver in the air raid offense? I mean, I'm sure you could argue that. No, it's the offensive line, collective offensive line. Now, as a former QB, I would tell you I 100% agree. Always have. Been preaching it for years on the radio that the game is won and lost on the line of scrimmage. Every game. Every game is won and lost on the line of scrimmage. It starts there. It ends there. It doesn't get off the ground unless you're good there. You know, all that kind of stuff. When you think about it from an air raid perspective, all that is magnified. Here's what Mike Leach said about it.
I know you've been trying to get your line to a certain point. When they're not where you want them to be, does that affect play calling, deep passes, that sort of thing?
Affects everything. It's the most important position on the team. And people may disagree, and if they do disagree, they're wrong, but offensive line's the most important position.
So you hear those comments, and like I say, I 100% agree. Now, here's what I wanted to point out at you. State's offensive line, it doesn't lack length. It doesn't lack talent, potential, all that. State's offensive line lacks experience. That's what you don't have. And I know nobody wants you bringing up Sylvester Croom quotes. I don't mind him, because I thought he nailed this one. Experience, you can't speed it up, okay? That's the thing. You can't hurry up. You can't speed up experience, and it's so true. So I've thought, I'm going to look at this before I make up my mind, and sure enough, after looking at it, it kind of was hammered home what I was thinking. So I sat down, I looked at State's projected starting offensive line here, the experience on that offensive front, compared it to some other SEC teams. Here's what the numbers tell you. See if this means anything to you. Left tackle, Charles Cross, left guard Cam Jones, center LaQuinston Sharp, right guard Bill Johnson, right tackle Scott Lashley. There are 2 seniors there. Okay? There's 2 seniors on that offensive front. One is LaQuinston Sharp, the other is Scott Lashley. There are 2 sophomores, and there's 1 freshman. That's their actual eligibility according to the NCAA, because 2020 does not count. Okay, so that's their actual eligibility according to the NCAA. A couple seniors, 2 sophomores, and a redshirt freshman. Here's what else I'm driving at. One of those seniors, Lashley, has never started a ball game. And he's coming off season-ending injury last year. Okay, so he's played tackle before. He's just never actually started a ball game before. So people who've played can understand that's pretty significant. You got to make a little step there to go from having a potential to be a starter to actually be a good starter. Okay, let me give you another example. Sharp, LaQuinston Sharp, senior, the other senior on your offensive line. He has, in his career, played in 18 games and started 9 of them, exactly half of the games he played in. But those were all at right guard and left guard. He's never started a ball game at center. He's your starting center. So that's just one way to talk. Okay, so you go, well, seniority, we got 2 seniors on an offensive line. Yeah, neither of them have started a game ever at this level at the position they are going to start this Saturday when they run out there. It'll be a first for both of them. What about guard? All right, so look at Cam Jones, your starting left guard. He is a redshirt sophomore. In 2019, first year at State, didn't play at all. Last year, he started and played in 6 games, all at right tackle. He's your starting left guard. Look at your right guard, Bill Johnson, sophomore. In 2018, he played in 3 games, didn't start any. 2019, played in 3 games, didn't start any. Last year, played in 8 games, started 3 of them at right tackle. He's now your right guard. Okay, so let me recap. Think about this now in terms of experience on your offensive line and continuity. Your right tackle has never started a game there. Didn't play at all last year. Your right guard has never started a game at right guard. Your center has never started a game at center. And your left guard has never started a game at left guard. And then we get to Charles Cross. He is the most experienced player on the offensive line at his position, and he's a redshirt freshman who's played in a grand total of 13 career ball games. In 2019, as a true freshman, he played in 3 games and therefore was able to redshirt. And last year, he played in 10 and started 10. Charles Cross is the only member of your starting offensive line who has ever started a ball game at the position he will start this Saturday against Louisiana Tech. Now, that's one way to illustrate experience, and that is individually. What about collectively? Collectively, this offensive line, if you add those up, this offensive line has 28 starts total under its belt. Now, I just told you that the majority of those are starts at positions other than what they're playing now, but it's still on the offensive line. That's something to be spoken for. I mean, 28 starts as a group. Keep in mind, 10 of those at their current position. That's all Charles Cross. So 28 starts on your offensive line going into the weekend. How does that compare? Well, I just thought I'd look it up for 3 other teams in the SEC. You're going to play all 3 of them. Alabama, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. Texas A&M, they were good on the offensive line. They can run the ball. little pro style built in there. Left tackle Kenyon Green. Now, let me preface too, some of these other teams, I haven't gone to research how their fall camps are going and whether or not these guys have indeed earned the starting job, and if they're one on the depth chart. There could be some differences, but just hang in there with me. Texas A&M left tackle Kenyon Green. 13 starts at left tackle in 2019, 10 starts there last year. Left guard for A&M, Ogun, how do you say it? Ogunbayi? Aki Ogunbayi. Freshman, has played in one game in his career. Not started, played in one game. A&M starting center Luke Matthews. Played in 11 games in 2019, didn't start any, and then last year was out for the year with an injury. Right guard at A&M, Layden Robinson. He's a redshirt freshman. Played in 3 games in 2019, played in 10 games in 2020, has not started. And right tackle, Jameer Johnson. He's a senior. He has, in 2018 through 2020, he started 17 games and played in 24 for Tennessee, not at A&M. So a lot of inexperience at Texas A&M. But if you add up the career starts on their offensive line, they have 40 career starts. All that inexperience. One guy played one game, another guard never started one, but they collectively have 40 starts on the offensive line. Remember, State has 28. Alabama's projected starting offensive line, 54 starts among the guys coming back. Evan Neal, left tackle, started 12 games for him there last year. Left guard, Tommy Brown. Center at Alabama, Chris Owens, a senior. 3 starts in his career, 2 at center, 1 at right tackle. The right guard started 13 games there last year. The right tackle at Alabama has started 9 games in his career. Alabama has 54 starts returning on its offensive line. Ole Miss offensive line. They returned 62 starts under their belt on that offensive line. At Ole Miss, left tackle Nick, I don't know if it's Broker or Brecker. He's a sophomore, but he started 10 games last year. Left guard Caleb Warren started 8 games last year. Center Ben Brown, he's started a bunch of games in his career at other positions. In 2018, Brown started 12 games at guard. 19 started 12 games. Last year, started 10 games. Right guard at Ole Miss, Jalen Cunningham, he's a sophomore. Has played in 20 games but hasn't started any. And the right tackle, Jeremy James, he's a freshman, but because he was a freshman last year, but he started 10 games at right guard. So they return a bunch of starts at center in certain positions, but collectively 62 starts. So again, we compared those. 62 starts returning on the Ole Miss offensive line, 54 on the Bama offensive line, 40 on Texas A&M's offensive line, and 28 on Mississippi State's offensive line. So the point being, they are talented. They can do the job. They are expected to make a jump. They have to. They will be better. But they are not experienced. This podcast is supported by Mississippi Farm Bureau Insurance. I'm telling you about it because they have local agents in all 82 counties around the state, and local is the key. We call them hometown heroes because they are in your hometown. You don't have to deal with somebody 2 states, 3 states away in an 800 number. Just have somebody local that lives down the street, goes to the same church, you see them out to eat, your kids go to school together. Let that person handle your insurance. I promise you, you're not going to regret it. Check out Farm Bureau Insurance at favrates.com. So to recap that, and I am not trying to pour water on your enthusiasm for the season at all, but to recap, there's not a lot of returning experience, and That's important on an offensive line. So their development has to be ramped up. Their development probably has been helped by practicing against a very good defensive front, aggressive defensive front and front seven. But you got guys who are going to go through stuff for the first time this Saturday in Davis-Wade Stadium. You have 4 out of 5 starters on your offensive line have never started a game at the position they will start at this Saturday. So I think that puts in perspective how much room they have to grow, how far they've got to go, and how quickly they've got to do it. Now, these are just stats, okay, numbers. They're not always an indicator of performance, but it is worth considering when you're going into a year and understanding. When Mike Leach said last year they had the youngest team in the country, he was not kidding. And in some ways, you're still getting your footing under you. And the building of that experience is going to not continue, it's going to start this Saturday. So in those 4 teams that I compared, just to recap, returning starts on the offensive line: Ole Miss 62, Alabama 54, Texas A&M 40, Mississippi State 28. Pretty significant. So speaking of starters, we've got a depth chart. The school put it out today. Let's go over that. At quarterback, it's Will Rogers or Chance Lovertich. That's the way it's listed. There's an or there. Same thing at running back. It's Woody Marks or Dylan Johnson. Now, here's where it gets a little more interesting. If you go to the X receiver position, X outside receiver, kind of the single side, Malik Heath listed as your starter there, with his backup at the X position being Tulu Griffin. Big difference in their sizes, but that's on the one side on the outside. In the slot at the H position, your starter is Jameer Calvin, the transfer from Washington State. His backup is Rufus Harvey out of Starkville, redshirt freshman. Both those guys 5'10", 170 pounds. At the Y position, which it's like your tight end, but instead it's a different slot position, you've got Austin Williams or Jaden Wally listed as your starters right there, with the backup being Christian Ford, who's at a good camp as a transfer. And then the split end or Z position, the starter is, as expected, Makai Polk, the transfer from Cal, and his backup is Caleb Ducking, the big 6'5", 205 JUCO transfer. Now, I went over the starters projecting that offensive line. Left tackle Charles Cross, left guard Cameron Jones, center is Sharp, right guard is Dollar Bill, right tackle is Lashley. What about their backup? So this is what's listed. The backup to Charles Cross at left tackle is Nick Jones, redshirt sophomore, 6'3", 300, and I think Nick Jones has had a good camp. I liked what I saw from him in the last big scrimmage at the stadium. The backup at left guard to Cameron Jones is Cole Smith. He is also the backup at center, so he's your first interior lineman, off the bench, either center or left guard. Listed as the backup at right guard is Cordavian Suggs, redshirt senior. I think he's had a good camp. And then your backup right tackle is listed as Albert Reese, the freshman, 6'7", 315. So really only one first-year player in the two deep on your offensive line. So that's a silver lining right there. Then you go over to the defensive side. These are your defensive starters and defensive depth chart. You've got defensive end, nose guard, and D tackle. That's your 3 defensive lineman positions listed in this 3-3-5. Okay, so the defensive end, a rush end position. Starter is listed as Randy Charlton, 6'3", 265, transfer from UCF. And his backup at the defensive end is DeMonte Russell, 6'4", 265. It's notable there that Harris is listed at the other position. I'll get to that. Your nose guard, as I talked about on here a couple of episodes ago, Cameron Young is the starter at nose, with his backup being Nathan Pickering. And then at the other rush positions, 3-man front, but he's listed as D tackle, not end, is 94 Crumity, with his backup being Jack Harris. So I like that. You'd love to have a healthy Jordan Davis in there, but he's not there. So then you go to the 3 linebacker positions, strong, middle, and weak. Sam, Mike, and Will. At the Sam position, Tyrus Wheat is your starter. And his backup, it's backups. It's listed as Sherman Timms or Rodney Gross. Both guys have done a really nice job. And Sherman Timms just continues to find ways to get on the field wherever he forces them to play him somewhere. And I think Gross is going to get playing time too. Middle linebacker, your starter is Nathaniel Watson. His backup is the JUCO transfer Deshaun Page. And at the will linebacker position, a little bit more of a rush position, Brule is your starter with Jet Johnson as his backup. Again, like that group also. And they'll mix and match, I'm sure. So then you go in the secondary. We know what you have at corner. Your starting corners are Martin Emerson and Emmanuel Forbes. Their backups are listed as DeCameron Richardson and Isaias Ferge. Then it's safety. Free safety, Colin Duncan is your starter with Jay Jemison, the redshirt senior, as his backup. The strong safety position, Jalen Green, transfer from Texas, listed as your starter with Dylan Lawrence as his backup. And then the dog safety position, a little kind of a tweener there, a little more downhill hitter, is starter is Fred Peters with Sean Preston Jr. listed as his backup. There's a couple things I wanted to point out also. At kicker, Rees is your kicker. He's going to be one of the best in the country. And this is interesting to me. At punter, they list Tucker Day or 56 Archer Trafford. It's either Trafford or Traford. I think it's Trafford. You need to know about him. He's a redshirt sophomore. He is left-footed, and he's 6'2", 240. And he originally was at Air Force. And with him, it's just a matter of consistency. He can absolutely kill it. He can absolutely crush the football. It's just a matter of consistency. But Tucker Day or Trafford. Rees is going to kick off. Kick returners are listed as Tulu Griffin and Woody Marks. Punt returners are Austin Williams and Emmanuel Forbes. Your starting deep snapper is going to be Hayes Hammond from Tupelo High School. And so those are your special teams starters are listed as such. So that's a look at the depth chart right there. It pretty much matches everything that I went over here in trying to predict who would be listed as starters, and that goes back to a couple of podcasts ago when John Paul asked me to go through that. And I think the things that I probably missed when I went through it was, I didn't have an or between Will Rogers and Lovertidge, and they do here on the depth chart for, whatever their purpose is. I talked about Jameer Calvin. I don't think I necessarily talked about him as a starter. I talked about Austin Williams and Jaden Wally as your starters, but they're both playing the same position. So Calvin's a starter in the other slot, and Harvey, I knew he'd get playing time. I didn't see him necessarily listed as an immediate backup, but he is right there. And then defense, pretty much goes to chalk there, what we thought we would see, other than, the one safety I didn't talk much about is Jay Jemison. And when you listen to the coaching staff, they're high on him. Feel like he's had a good camp. And there's a lot of young bodies that aren't on your two deep that are going to play for you some, especially on that defensive side of the ball, just based on the fall camps that they've had. So those are guys who've earned positions. All right, so that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Better Than Average podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. Hope that scratches the itch a little bit here on game week, even though we didn't have a press conference today. I was going to, and I think normally will, on Mondays, be able to go over the Mike Leach press conference with you. Those will happen on Mondays around 2 p.m. each week, previewing the upcoming opponent. It didn't happen today. So in future Monday episodes, we should have those for you on Monday nights. Instead, the next podcast coming up will come out on Thursday. It'll be 2 days before game day. It'll be the night of the Dog Talk Coaches Show. And so I might actually wait to publish just to listen to that show and see what's in there for you, if there's anything I need to pass along to you, and get it out there on Thursday night. Any questions between now and then, please tweet them to me. Hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, any of those. Send your questions there, and I can get them between now and Thursday. And I just appreciate you tuning in. Thanks to Mississippi Land Bank for their support, and to Mississippi Farm Bureau Insurance for always supporting this content as well. And I'll see you on the next one.